to It's a Woman's World, where we'll meet achieving women making a difference in our community. I'm Carolyn Bruna. Our guest is Christina Thomas, founder and head of the Journey School, a Montessori school in Montgomery County, Maryland. Welcome, Christina. I'm delighted to have you as a guest on our show. And I have to say, I have been looking forward to meeting you since a parent wrote to the studio and told us that about your amazing journey and recommended you for an interview. So welcome.
Well, thank you. Thank you. I thank you so much. I'm happy to be here.
I was all set to begin questioning with your journey about the Montessori school. But then after we spoke for a while, you told me about your other amazing journeys of basically your life and starting many other, what should I say, journeys? I keep saying the word journeys too much, but saying many other passages and things that you've done and things that you've learned. So tell us a little bit about how everything began, please.
Well, I mean, first and foremost, I think that what stands out for me personally is being a child of a military family. My dad was in the Navy, so we traveled a lot more than many other people that I've ever met. We would, change states. I lived in Guam, 4th through 6th grade. We've lived in California, Washington State, New Jersey, and then finally ended in Maryland. He ended his military career in Maryland. So the sort of traveling bug really bit me hard. And I always get, as I joke, a 7-year itch, to move. It's time to move. So I've enjoyed traveling even after I finished college, and I joined VISTA, which is Volunteers in Service to America, and I traveled out to the Southwest, where I worked on the Navajo Reservation as a VISTA volunteer. And I worked in a high school there that helped American Indian children from dropping out of high school. So I did a mentoring and tutoring program for children in high school. And I guess that too is where I kind of got the bug to be a teacher and thought about being a teacher at that point. So, with other travels and being, having to leave the Navajo Reservation at some point, and I traveled back to Maryland, I then tried and pursued trying to get a teacher certification. But that also took many years.
It does take, on the Navajo Reservation, did you say you taught there? What did you do for when you were there? Well,
I worked in a school. So I worked in a school as a VISTA volunteer, but my primary job was to create a tutoring and mentoring program for Native American youth so that it would decrease the dropout rate for them in school to feel like they were being supported in the school. So being in a school is really where I started to get the bug to be a teacher.
And then from there you got to Howard County, is that correct?
Yeah. So when I left, well, then the journey continues, because when I left the Navajo Reservation, I actually spent some time in Phoenix, Arizona, again, as a VISTA leader, and I became a literacy volunteer supervisor for VISTA programs throughout the state of Arizona. So I helped other VISTA volunteers in Yuma, Arizona, in Nogales, Arizona. And so I helped coordinate those projects for Literacy Volunteers of America in those areas.
Let me just interrupt. Tell me, VISTA, I know I've heard the name so much. What does it stand for and how did that start? That's not in existence anymore today, is it?
Well, it's called AmeriCorps now. They've sort of dropped the VISTA, but initially VISTA, stands for Volunteers in Service to America. And it was started as sort of a domestic Peace Corps, where you would go into areas that were in need of support and help in different ways. And so I was a VISTA volunteer in particular, working with literacy and dropout rates.
I see. Okay. And then you got interested in teaching and education, and then you got to Howard County at a very prestigious school.
Well, in Howard County, I mean, they're considered in Maryland, one of the top school districts in Maryland. And it was very difficult to get a job in Howard County teaching at the time. I had been a
Oh.
stay-at-home mom for 7 years at that point. And so when I applied as a social studies teacher after getting my teacher certification, there was hundreds of applicants and very few positions at that time. So I was very lucky that I had a great interview, and I had my choice between two schools, and I chose and started working at Wild Lake Middle School, teaching 7th and 8th grade social studies.
So you actually had public school experience before you started your Montessori school, right?
Oh yeah, yes. And even before that, when I originally came back to Maryland, I was actually working in DC at the Cesar Chavez Public Charter High School for Public Policy.
Oh.
And I ran their technology as their technology teacher, as well as I created the Foundations in Public Policy course for 9th graders while I was teaching there.
You have an amazing spread of different activities and education and teaching and just amazing, wonderful things that you've done. So now, how did you decide to get interested in starting a Montessori school?
Well, to be honest, it was my children. When my oldest was ready for preschool, my husband, who's also an educator, and I went and visited different preschools in the area, and we fell into a Montessori preschool program. And I had never really heard about Montessori before, but sitting in that classroom and watching these very young children be incredibly independent and be able to navigate a classroom and to choose the works that they wanted to do was very impressive to us. And so at that point, we fell in love with the idea of Montessori, and we enrolled both of our children into a Montessori preschool, in which they continued to do Montessori all the way through 6th grade.
And you have two girls, right? You had
Yes.
said.
Yeah. I have my oldest is now 17, and my youngest is a freshman, and she is 15 in Howard County Public Schools now.
Oh, so now they went from your Montessori school to the public school. Let's go back to then actually starting the Montessori school. How did you do that?
So
I remember that was a long process, and you had many things to do to qualify.
Oh, sure. So you have to fill out an application with MSDE, which is the Maryland State Department of Education. And you have to show proof that you are that you have the materials necessary to have a program. You have to have the curriculum written up and submit your curriculum for approval. The biggest thing was trying to find a space in a building was difficult because a lot of buildings aren't necessarily geared towards schools. And so that was probably, of all the challenges and the writing up of all the materials, the hardest part was actually finding a building. The first building we looked at and we thought it was a go, fell apart. It didn't work out because the planning and zoning decided it wasn't appropriate for a private school to be there. And so I ended up asking the directress of my children's elementary school if I could borrow classroom space from her to start the middle school. And she graciously agreed to allow me to start my program in her building starting in the fall of 2015.
Wow. And you had mentioned, which really got me, that you had many mom friends who helped you along this path. How did they help you?
So in the preschool, we had a very tight group of mom friends at the preschool. We all felt like we found our tribe, and we often were good friends to this day. Really feel like this was a unique time in our lives in which we all really connected. And many of my friends continued through Montessori after the preschool years. And when we were looking at many of the Montessori programs in the area ended at 6th grade. And so when we were talking about where our children would go for 7th and 8th to finish middle school, they all kind of looked at me and said, well, you're the educator in the group. What are we going to do about this? Or what are you going to do about this? So I went to training. I went to basically a six-week course over the summer in Ohio. I lived in my camper van during that training, and my husband took care of my children. And I spent the summer away getting the training that I needed to be a Montessori adolescent teacher. And then in the fall of 2015, I opened a standalone middle school called the Journey School with only 4 students. But it was a magical year.
Really? Oh, that's wonderful, though. That's amazing. I can imagine this, but the stress of it. But finally getting there, I guess you relaxed with your 4 students and focused right on them. That gave you a good start.
Yeah, it
Made
did.
your lesson plans and such.
Yes. I had 2 other teachers that I worked with who were wonderful. And we really were a family. We were a family with the students and the teachers. And it was a wonderful time and a wonderful experience. Back to what I was going to say before about my girlfriends helping me
Go
open the
ahead.
school was, one of the things when I first was thinking about opening a school, it sounded insane. Like, who could possibly do this? It was very intimidating. And one of my very good friends said to me, the only difference between someone actually opening a school and you is that they are doing it. So are you going to do it? And that really rang true to me, and was just like, I just got to figure this out one step at a time, and I can tackle one thing at a time. And that's what I did. But her saying that to me really kept going over and over in my ear to say, you know what, the only difference between me and them is that they are doing it. Therefore, there's no reason I can't do it. And so that's what made me take those first steps.
That's interesting. Yes, and you mentioned that to me when we were on the phone, just do it. But it's not so easy to just do it and force yourself. But luckily, you had the persistence, and you did.
And the support.
You know what
of
I
my
wanted
family.
to ask you, though, that, earlier that I forgot. The difference between the Montessori school and the public school, in the sense that you have a lot of things that are outside, that are part of the curriculum, which a public school, of course, with a lot of students, can't really do that.
Sure.
But tell us about that and about the facilities.
So in the adolescent years, Maria Montessori really felt like children needed to work with their hands. And if you get their hands busy doing something, the mind follows, the brain follows. And with that, our curriculum is very hands-on. And Maria Montessori believed in what was called a microeconomy, where the children actually start to learn how to run a business, how to create an opportunity for themselves to make money and to validate their work in the field of adults. And so with that in mind, at the Journey School, we have chickens in which the children help raise, and we sell chicks as well as eggs. And then the children also will cook with the eggs, and we sell our baked goods to our community. We also have bees. The children learn how to do beekeeping. We sell honey. We make things with honey. We make things with the wax from the honey. And so these are all opportunities for them to experience what it's like to, have experience in the real world. And then the last thing we have is an organic garden that the children plant they plant it and they plant it. And then they make things from the produce as well as sell the produce itself. Also, the children make a community meal all together once a week. The adolescents plan and create a community meal for everyone in the school. So they learn how to cook, they learn how to serve, those kinds of things.
So there's many more life skills, it sounds like. Yeah. This has been so exciting. Let me stop, though. We're going to break for a short public service announcement.
Before we celebrate the freedom most Americans have, we must fight for the freedom all Americans deserve. Because all lives can't matter until Black lives matter.
Welcome back. We're speaking with Christina Thomas, founder and CEO of the first standalone Montessori Middle School in Montgomery County. So Christina, tell us how your girls got involved to help you. Actually, you had told me you included them right from the start, your 2 daughters.
Yes. So at the time that we started the program, or started thinking about opening our own middle school, my girls were only, I think my oldest was, she must have been 10 at the time, and my youngest was 8. And so I talked with them at length about what it was I was trying to do, and in hopes that they would have a school that they could continue in after their current school ended at 6th grade. And so they were with me, because at the year that I took to open the school, when they weren't in school, they were with me, but I took them to the planning and zoning meeting that I had to select our building and to get it approved. They tagged along on any, paperwork I had to drop off in Baltimore to the, so they were there at the Maryland State Department of Education with me, because I thought it was very important that they understood what it was we were trying to do. And as a woman, I also thought it was important for my girls to see what the process is for doing something you believe in and starting something fresh, and that it's all possible. So they needed to see that firsthand. And I felt it was really important to model that for them so they could see it too. And my family was so supportive. My mom lives with us. And so she helped take care of the girls when I had late night meetings to try and recruit new students and things like that. And again, my husband took care of my girls while I went off to training. So this was definitely a family affair, and I couldn't have done without the support of my family behind me 100%. We ultimately put a second mortgage on our house so that we could fund the school to start with. And so these are the sacrifices my family was willing to make this dream a reality. So I couldn't have done it without them.
You did go through a lot, but but you also, and I see you really, people do need support, and you were very lucky that your family did help you in many, many ways, as well as your girlfriends.
Yeah.
But you also told me, I remember when we were talking, that if you can do this, anybody can. But no. I have to differ with you, because really, it's not, even with support, somehow it's not always possible for most people. And you do have, I have to say, amazing persistence and tenacity and determination. As you see, I looked up some synonyms on the thesaurus, but really, so give some tips for women to get this persistence and tenacity and determination so that they can go on with it, with doing these great things and whatever is great in their life.
Well, I think the most important thing is to always have a plan A, B, C, D, E, F. It's so important that if you have a dream in mind, you cannot be inflexible. You have to be able to, pivot and turn when you can, and keep that goal in mind. Sometimes it doesn't matter how you get to the goal, as long as you get there. And it may take longer than you anticipated. It may be harder than you anticipated, and it might take you into other ways that you didn't anticipate that is even better than the original dream. So I think it's really important to be really flexible with that and always have other plans in place. And the other big lesson I learned, is that I have a lot of hope in humanity, in the sense that I feel like you ask for what it is that you want. It's so important. And you'd be surprised at how many people are willing to help you if you just ask specifically. And it's so easy. People would come to me, how can I help? And I'd be like, oh, it's fine. I've got it. I'm going to do this. But then I started to get in the habit of asking people to do something very specifically. Could you come to an open house and hand out flyers for me? Sure. And then your friends and family and people who want to support your dream are happy and feel better too, to be a part of something you're creating, if you give them that opportunity by being very specific about what it is that you want. And there can be big asks and there can be little asks. But honestly, you never know unless you just ask.
Yeah, I so agree, because as coming from an only child family, I was very quiet and shy and never asked. And then eventually I learned, but late in life, to ask. And when I realized, when I did ask people, as you were saying, they really enjoy having the ability to help. So
Mhm.
it is amazing that asks go very far. And I like your tip about plans A, B, and C. That's not always something that people do either, I think. That's
Yeah.
great. Yeah.
Yeah. I think it's, the bottom line is I never gave up on something, but I always, people say, joke that if someone tells me no, I'm going to find a workaround. And that's true too. I'm a problem solver. I like to think outside the box. I'm big on networking. You never know who's going to come into your circle. And it's important that people know sort of what it is you're trying to accomplish and what you're trying to do. And frankly, if you're passionate about something and you believe in something, people are more likely to jump on board. Like they're very excited to be a part of something when you're excited to talk about it and to include them in on the process.
That's true. They get caught up in that excitement.
Mhm.
Yes, you're right. So you've broken a number of glass ceilings. What are they?
I think that, I would consider myself still pretty young for my age to have done that, done something like this, is to open my own school. But honestly, people do start at a young age on some of these plans or some of these dreams. But, I just think that it's important to, be clear about what you want. And it's important that as a woman that you model what you want and how you want people to treat you. It's very important. And I think it's also important for young, girls and young women to see women sort of going after and be verbal about it, model what you're saying, model what you're doing so others can see and grow from it. I really believe in that. My oldest daughter is in Germany right now studying. She is with a scholarship program, and I couldn't be more proud of her. She really went after what she wanted, and she went through the process. And I'm super proud of that. So I'd like to think I had a little bit in her confidence to do something like that when all her friends were like, I would never go to another country to study. And I think it's important that she did what she wanted and put herself out there.
Mhm. Oh, I think it's wonderful. You're a wonderful model. I was just reading something too about this, that actually it was for women who were having trouble with boyfriends and not realizing what a good relationship is, that they were starting classes, I believe it was in a public school, on how to handle relationships for young girls with boyfriends. Isn't that interesting? I
Mhm.
loved it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think it's important that
Mhm.
we teach and model these things that people know that things can be possible, and there can be workarounds, and you just have to they joke, you say you fake it till you make it, and honestly, sometimes that can be true, and it's good to practice out loud so that you have those tools in your tool belt when situations arise.
Hmm. Yes. Wow. Let me ask you to tell people how they can contact you and find out more information about the Journey School.
Sure. So the Journey School, which began as a standalone middle school, has now opened an elementary school. So we are grades 1 through 8. And you can contact us by visiting our website at www.thejourneyschool.net. Or calling us at our number that's on the website, or emailing me at C as in cat Thomas at thejourneyschool.net.
Hmm, great. And I think I'm going to tell you a little bit. You do know that I listened recently when you had a panel of students,
Mhm.
present students and future students and parents,
They were
and teachers.
graduates,
That's
actually. They were
right.
all graduates
Oh,
of our
they were
program.
graduates.
Yes.
Okay. And they were telling about their experiences at the Journey School and how the Journey School prepared them for future higher education and for life. That was
Mhm.
just wonderful to see how they appreciated this education
Mhm.
and how it prepared them. So um, were you surprised by all this, and had you heard this before?
Well, we've been doing the alumni panel now. Well, COVID knocked it out, but this was our second alumni panel that we had done. And there were recent graduates as well as students getting ready to graduate high school, part of that panel. And no, we didn't prep them for what they were going to say. But I did know that based on our previous panel, the things that students might say about our program and how it helped them. And frankly, in the ways that they all became successful at their high school job, the job of going to high school, and how not all of them, some of them are going off to college. And then we have some that aren't doing college, but they are, becoming a fireman. And I think that's so exciting and speaks volumes for their experience at the Journey School, helping them figure out what it is they want to do and how they might be successful in life.
Mm-hmm. It was a very wonderful experience for me to be able to listen into that. Yeah, that was great.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And we only mentioned a moment about starting the elementary school. So you originally started as a middle school, and then you went backwards and started as an elementary, right?
Yes. So we did the opposite of what anyone ever gave me advice about doing. Most schools, when they start at the younger years and add the older years as they move forward. And I, of course, had to do it the opposite. And I, just because that's where we saw the need, and it's wherever you see the need. Initially, the need was a middle school that really catered and focused on those middle school years. And then we saw a need for the students that wanted to join us at younger ages, then grow up through to the middle school years. So we added in 2019, we started our elementary program. So our elementary school goes from grades 1 to 6, and then our middle school is grades 7 and 8. But we do use that 6th grade year as a transitional year. When a child is ready for the middle school years, they would be in the middle school. But if they still need a year of support in the elementary level, they would stay at the elementary school level, which is what Montessori intended. She really intended that instead of following children based on grades and age alone, you really follow them at their developmental abilities and where they are and what they want in their education as they move forward.
Oh, that's very interesting. Yeah, right. So tell us now one or two things. What do you want people most to remember about your many journeys and the beginning of the founding of the Journey School, and what's good for women?
Well, I think ultimately, especially as a mother and a woman, I think it's important to talk out loud what it is that you want to do or you dream of doing, and make your children, whether or not you have sons or daughters, make your children a part of that journey. You'd be surprised at if you treat them in a way that's respectful and you bring them along on the journey, what they get out of it is something much more than just what they might learn in school. But there are a lot of skills: how you talk to other adults, how do you manage, how do you negotiate challenging discussions or situations, and have them be a part of that journey and talk to them about it, I think is really, really important. And ultimately, I just want to say to people, and I know you joke with me that it's not possible, but I do feel that anyone can do these things. You just put one foot in front of the other. You ask for the things that you want, and you let people help you along the way, is very important. And I come across to all of this with a very grateful heart. I am so grateful for everyone in my life that has supported me and listened to me. And I think that I just ultimately feel very blessed and very grateful for the opportunities I've been given.
Oh, you've done wonderful things, and we thank you very much. Thank you for coming on my show.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. We hope you've enjoyed meeting our guest, Christina Thomas, as much as I have, and you've learned some good tips about women with tenacity, persistence, and determination who can accomplish great things. And hopefully it'll spur you on, woman or man, to do some great things. If you have any ideas for a show, contact us. We'd love to hear them. We're Woman's World TV at AOL.com. Remember, it's a woman's world. I'm Carolyn Bruna. See you next time.